This episode is on sex addiction and intimacy disorders and other addictions. If you are in early recovery, I do not recommend listening to this episode. And if you're in a vulnerable place with your recovery, I recommend setting a safety plan and taking it at a slower pace. Thank you. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Love is Healing podcast, a people's podcast where we bring in experts and lay people to talk about topics regarding complex trauma, addictions, and everything in between. Today we have a guest, Havi Kang. She's an LPCS, a csat-s, CPTTS, and a CMAT, who's trauma-informed. She's a licensed professional counselor, or an LPC, who is passionate about helping and educating clients and therapists in healing trauma. She is licensed to provide psychotherapy in Arizona and telehealth services in Florida. Javi is also a trauma and resilience life coach at her business, healwithhavi, Coaching and Consulting LLC, where she coaches clients one-on-one or in groups and provides supervision and consultation to other professionals in the field. Javi's specialties are intimacy and relationship issues, love addiction, attachment issues, and betrayal trauma. Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about this.
Of course. My pleasure. All right. So tell us a little bit about what do all these letters mean actually behind your name?
Yeah, sure. Lots of acronyms. So yeah, the LPC, as you mentioned, is the licensed professional counselor. The S means I'm just a supervisor, so I supervise people through their licensure process. CSAT is certified sex addiction therapist, and the S there also designates supervisor. So I supervise candidates who are going through the certification process. CPTT stands for Certified Partner Trauma Therapist. That is specifically working with betrayed partners. So, of any infidelity, betrayal from sex addiction, compulsive sexual behavior, problematic sexual behaviors, whatever you want to call it. And then CMAT. CMAT is Certified Multiple Addictions Therapist. That one, I have a certification in the eating disorder one, and then I also am certified in the love addiction one, but interestingly enough, I teach that one too. So it's kind of like a crossover. I do a lot of teaching for the ITAP, which is the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals. They are the company that trains CSATs, CPTTs, and CMATs. So I'm faculty for them, and I teach on the love addiction, love avoidance material. And then I also, like I said, teach the CMAT. It's a 3-day training where I do a lot of education on what love addiction is, what love avoidance is, as well as treatment modalities, treatment approaches. And then I also kind of create some of my own material based on my own clinical experience. As you may know, Magnolia, maybe the audience knows or doesn't know, but love addiction isn't super well researched. So that's kind of like my new mission is research love addiction, love avoidance, and if I can contribute in any way to that, that is also my goal.
Very cool. So if anybody is researching it now, has any ideas for you, you'd want them to reach out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm also open to lived experience, Chloe. If you're someone who has love addiction, and I love to, because with my teaching, I like to story tell and provide case examples, all that good stuff. So if you're out there and you're like, oh, I want to reach out, please do. I'm definitely open to spending some time with you, hearing your story and getting your permission to see if I can use it as teaching material.
Love that. Super helpful on the training end, on the recipient end, to hear those case studies because they really bring everything home together. If you are contributing your story, it really allows professionals to help other people like you. So you're contributing also. Thank you.
Hmm.
Before we get into the material itself, how did you become involved with these fields?
Yeah, good question. You know that friend that just always is a good listener and just, carries everyone's burdens really well. Oh, that was me, right? Like I was the good friend, the friend that people would come to. And after a while, I just thought, okay, why not go into the field of psychology? So straight from like my associate to my bachelor to my master's has been in psychology and in particularly counseling, of course. And, generally it was just the attachment stuff and the trauma stuff. That was really what was my calling. That was what was on my heart. And so I've done a lot of specialized trainings specifically for trauma and attachment. I began working so I did an internship at, like a general mental health, partial hospitalization program. So that's like when you're in treatment for most of the day. It's kind of like a job. You go in at 9, you leave at 5 p.m., but you go home. But your whole week is full of your treatment. And so that's where I began my internship. And then I also worked in outpatient level of care, so intensive outpatient. Then after a while, I worked at the Meadows, which is pretty world-renowned at inpatient treatment center. I spent almost 8 years at the Meadows, and that's kind of the meat and potatoes of where I learned what I do know. I mean, I'm so grateful for my time there. I was working with the young adult population for about 2 to 3 years. I want to say 3, 4 years. Oh, I can't remember now. I was working as primary therapist, and then I was doing trauma therapy with them. And then I moved over to be clinical director at the women's program that they have. And I spent almost 3 years doing that. And that's kind of where my passion has, I mean, all of my experience, I mean, but working with women in particular is really what my passion is. And working with intimacy issues, relationship issues, and part of that is attachment, and part of that is also love addiction. And this program that I worked at specialized with female sex addiction and love addiction and trauma and betrayal trauma too. So that's kind of where like I narrowed all of this down and where it really became my passion.
Thank you. That's quite a resume. It's very impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I guess it doesn't end there. Then I went to, well, now I'm in outpatient practice. I'm in a group practice out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I work virtually right now, and I also provide telehealth services in the state of Florida. Do coaching as well, individual one-on-one coaching, and then group coaching and consultation, supervision. I work for ITAP. I mentioned ITAP earlier, the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals. So I work there full time as well. And then part time, I do therapy in the evenings.
Awesome. Thank you.
Um,
What inspires you to work with women over working with men? I mean, I feel like people just kind of feel called in general, right? Or they feel some type of pull, but what is it like for you?
I don't know. I think it's just I've- understanding the female brain a little bit more, the mechanisms of, the female experience, not only, my own personal lived experience, but also that's just where a lot of my clinical experience has been as well. So I just feel, I guess, more comfortable. That doesn't mean that I don't work with male clients. I do, but my passion is more with the female population, female identifying population. And I don't know. I just I feel like not to be biased, but the connection to emotion that they have. I know, male identifying clients absolutely also have the ability to do that. But I don't know, that's just where my passion is and where my heart is. And sometimes I really enjoy working with complex cases, complexity, and like figuring things out. And I really enjoy again whatever client, whoever is sitting in front of me. I think the idea of just working with some complexity is it's really fun.
I can definitely relate to that. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences, similarities, and overlaps between sex addiction and love addiction?
Similarities, I would say, would be the addiction perspective. The disease model of addiction is definitely present in both sex addiction and love addiction. And also the trauma perspective is very much present in both sex and love addiction. I would say working with fantasy as well. Again, fantasy is it's a natural thing that we as humans experience, but it's the use of it. It's when it becomes maladaptive or when the daydreaming itself becomes maladaptive and becomes more about coping. That's another core feature of love addiction and sex addiction. So similarities there. I would also say the the intimacy issue part is present in both. Differences. Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know if there is a lot of differences. Well, with all clients, whether, whatever gender you are, showing up in the office with sex addiction or love addiction or both, I there's definitely different treatment modalities, I guess, right? I think that would be some of the differences is I would apply probably different mechanisms, different approaches. We could talk about that a little later, maybe once we get into that section. But yeah, that's kind of what comes to the top of my mind. Or any that you would even add, Magnolia, because I know you work with this too.
Definitely. I will say that we did record an episode, and it's episode 12 that
Mm,
talks about sex addiction. So we do break down a little bit about how it is an intimacy disorder, and we have a conversation on that.
great.
And in my perspective, I'd say I just really like to talk about objectification. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but it's a soapbox that I have. And so, with anything, I agree. It stems from trauma, of course. It stems from trouble regulating your emotions, connecting to yourself, connecting with other people. And sometimes, like in these cases, it can look a lot like objectifying other people. To objectify someone means to look at them as an object, something that they can provide for you, and seeing them unidimensionally. So, not really seeing them as a whole person, right? But maybe like a fantasy, like you want them to be. So, projecting what we want onto those people. And then, love addiction to me is like that high of the romance of the new partner, of the novelty of the situation. Whereas sex addiction is more about sex, and it also is related to the porn addiction, right? And so, like, the sexual behaviors maybe provide the high. Whereas with the love addiction, it's like that connection, that novelty, that seeking, that courtship that provide the high. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, yeah, like with love addiction, and we'll talk about this more, but a psychological dependency on the idea of like love or the romantic love, but the perceived version that the love addict has, not necessarily healthy love. So it's like this, yeah, dependence on the idea of romantic love, also on it could be on the partner itself, and then it also could just be the experience itself of being in love. So it could kind of go down any of those avenues, or it could go down all of those avenues as well. But yeah, I agree. And same thing with the objectification. That's what the fantasy is. It's you're objectifying a partner or potential partner to get a hit, to get a high, to have some sense of soothing, some sense of regulation.
Yes. With love addiction, is it always that somebody feels the high highs? Or is it possible to have love addiction and then just like remain in that high place?
I would say it's very highs and lows. Like you're gonna be up, it's gonna feel great, it's gonna feel euphoric, it's gonna feel like the crazy in love and super intense. But with that, though, with such a high, everything must come down, right? And so there's gonna be a crash, unfortunately. There is gonna be a low. And that usually is when there's some kind of like when your needs aren't getting met, when there isn't enough communication, maybe they didn't text back as quickly as you wanted, and then anxiety kicks in, and then panic kicks in, and then, obsession kicks in, and then maybe some stalking, like, okay, where are they at? What are they doing? Are they at work? Are they out? What's going on, right? And so when that experience is happening, that's part of the low, the down part, right? That isn't as as fun to deal with as like the intensity of a fun new relationship. So with love addiction, it absolutely waxes and wanes. And part of the problem there too is when we're in that low, we need, I don't know, you could say a hit, right? Or we could even say reciprocity from the partner or the potential partner. We need something. We need a text back. We need a flirty eye contact back. We need something, that level of reciprocity to bring us back up to either baseline or to bring us back up to that high again. And that's why it's this up and down. There's going to be days of like smooth, some regulation. But there's going to be days where it's going to be pretty much a roller coaster.
Thank you. Now, jumping into the material, we have love avoidance and we have love addiction. They're on a continuum. We have love avoidance on one side, we have love addiction on another side. Javi, walk us through a little bit of what this all means, please.
Yeah, so absolutely. It is on a continuum. One end is the love addiction, the other end is the love avoidance. So a lot of my training I mentioned is from the Meadows, which is Pia Mellody's material, her book Facing Love Addiction. So that's where a lot of this material is going to be coming from, what I'm sharing with you. But Pia says that, we can be both. We can be both a love addict and we can be a love avoidant. And maybe we're more like predominantly one or the other. So maybe we're more of a love addict than we are the love avoidant, but there may be times in our life where we jump into that love avoidance behaviors. But maybe predominantly we're the addict side of things. And so we can absolutely vacillate. Pia talks a lot about living in the extremes, and that's exactly what it is. So same thing with sex addiction or sexual, compulsive behaviors is there's this binge type of a process where we're, acting out, and then there's the sexual anorexia, which is the other end of the spectrum where there's a restriction in the acting out behavior. So similarly, intimacy wise and relationally wise, we can be with the love addict, very compulsive relationally. So compulsive relational behaviors, right? And then again, we can jump into the relationally avoidant behaviors as well. And then with the love avoidant, well, I'll say this too is typically, not 100% of the time, the love addict might find themselves in a relationship with a love avoidant, or even just an avoidant attachment style type of person, someone who predominantly lives in that realm. That kind of a pairing is what gets them into this love addiction cycle, which is what Pia Mellody talks about as well. This cyclical pattern of behavior and experience when it comes to love addiction. And, with the cycle, it starts off really strong. It starts off, like I said, with that high. Feels really good, feels really intense, spending all the time together. You're super excited about it. But then with the love avoidant or the avoidant attacher, it might be too much for them. And then they start to pull away. And then for the love addict, it becomes more, that's where their anxiety kicks up because a love addict typically has more of an anxious attachment style. And so they're going to go into that anxiety, they're going to go into that obsession, they're going to go into that worry. In this beginning phase, this is also where that dependency starts to develop as well, that psychological dependency that I was talking about earlier. Whether again, it's dependency on the relationship, whether it's dependency on that partner or the idea of love as well. So the dependency is increasing slowly but surely. And then when that avoidant partner pulls away, that love addict feels like there's nothing, keeping them up, keeping them standing. Because again, that dependency they is what's the part of a big problem of love addiction. Um, so yeah, I'll stop there for a second. Anything that you want to add or think?
That it feels like the person's world falls apart completely because it's putting all your eggs in that basket, yes, but just putting your whole sense of self and your whole sense of meaning in the other person. So that is why it can be so devastating and so shattering.
Yeah. And that's one of the core features of love addiction too, is what you said, where the love addict will abandon themselves, abandon their needs, their wants, their values, their morals. That will get pushed to the side to be able to connect with this partner, this fantasy or this fantasized type of a partner. And in that, then, who we are starts to crumble, or we don't have access to who we are, or we forget who we are. Um, that's such again, another key component, another one of the symptoms of love addiction, and including the difficulty to be alone, to sit in silence, to to have an ease or a comfort when they're by themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I have shared on a couple of our early episodes a little bit about my upbringing and things. One of the things that I don't think I necessarily mentioned is that I grew up with several love addicts. For sure, I grew up with at least three, potentially four. And I grew up with one person who was love avoidant, for sure. Crystal clear, fits all the definitions. And so these were the adults that shaped me. And I learned a lot of the behaviors from them. And so to me, that was normal because I didn't have any evidence otherwise. On top of the movies that I grew up with, fairy tale movies, princess movies, and I just think a little bit about the influence on culture, like, and we could even say addicted culture because that's a culture, right? Whether or not someone acknowledges it as an addiction. Also, how media can portray different things and we can follow suit with the different behaviors that we see before us. What thoughts do you have on that, and what impacts have you seen on the way messaging in the media falls in line with
I,
this?
yeah, I have seen a huge impact with culture, media, social media with love addiction. Absolutely. I think when I teach clients about love addiction and we look into their histories and we start to understand what shapes them as a human being, that is one thing that I definitely do some digging around, some investigation around. Like, yeah, what did you watch growing up? I know it might seem such a random question, but it is important. What movies did you watch? What type of music did you listen to? Um, because as you probably and everyone listening is very well aware, the movies, TV, music romanticize this obsessive, addictive kind of love. It's out there. That's the messaging. That is the cultural messaging is you're supposed to be addicted. You're supposed to be obsessed. And you're supposed to be on the floor sobbing when something bad happens between you and your partner. That conflict resolution takes a really, really long time, that the drama is supposed to be there. Again, think about every movie you've watched. Think about your favorite music for a second. How much of that is about love? How much is that about the drama of love, the drama of relationships?
Yes. Yes. I'm raising two girls. And so I'm very mindful of what happened to me, how I was raised or not raised, and how I want to raise them, and what messages come into their sphere of influence, right? My likes have definitely shifted over time growing up with these people in my house who were love addicts. I did listen to a lot of love songs, and that's primarily what they would listen to. And they were really devastating love songs and like about the heartbreak and the
Mhm.
downs, right? And like even some of the favorite songs in the household were had to do about like drinking because of heartbreak. It's just so normalized. Or like
So
it's some specific songs in Spanish, like you just play them and bam, the whole room is singing to them, right? And it's like, yes, it's cultural, things like that, but like also listening to the words that you're saying, because in some ways you do become what you say, right? And you create your own reality in that way as well.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then the different shows and movies, like I'm like, yeah, oh my gosh. Like I grew up in the era with emo music.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We all did that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then rom-coms, I mean, that's a whole thing in and of itself. That's literally all I would watch. So yes, ups and downs, roller coasters.
Yeah, and take a moment and even think about what messages did I learn from that that are still active in my life today, especially if you're a love addict, right? Or even just if you're someone who has some relational difficulties, right? This can be applicable to everyone. We're not immune to this. Any country or culture that you're from, I mean, I think I want to say probably most cultures romanticize love, romanticize this. So I'm Indian. You're talking about the Spanish culture. So even in, when I watch movies, same thing. The oh my God, it's dramatized. In our culture, movies, when I was growing up, at least Indian movies, they didn't actually kiss. But they would do this like, I mean, there will be musicals in them too. So like there'll be like intermissions and there's music and they're dancing, but it's all about love. It's like the forbidden love. That's the message is because in our culture we have a lot of arranged marriages as well. So even the idea of like finding your own love, we have this message of that's taboo. Like you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be arranged. Your family will find someone for you to love, right? So it's different for me in the culture that I grew up in versus probably like, the American culture, the Christian culture, Catholic culture, whatever culture, right? There's different messaging, right? With the Christian Catholic, a majority of cultures, divorce is taboo. So you need to find the right one and then stay with that one, right? So, and I get it, but at the same time, really, if you dig deep, what message does that tell you? Does that say that I need to settle with like the next best thing? And then how does that compromise your values versus cultural values, which I know we have to uphold, spiritual values, religious values. But what about your personal values? And that's something that I like to dig in with my clients too.
Which are so hard to tap into when you grew up neglected and no one
Mhm.
asked you what you wanted or you were just overlooked, when you grew up with a lot of trauma and were made fun of like, oh, ha ha ha, these are your preferences. That's unacceptable in some kind of way. And then naturally, what happens in general with the brain and trauma is when reality becomes so overwhelming, so dark, so all consuming, the psyche starts to split off. And that's when you see elements of dissociation, which is what feeds the fantasy, which is what feeds addiction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantasy is a regulatory tool that begins in childhood when there's neglect, when there's abandonment. And again, I know those are heavy terms, and I know you might be thinking, no, I don't have any abandonment, I don't have any neglect in my life. It can be abandonment and neglect can be pretty insidious, right? Like it can creep in many, many different forms. And so taking a second, being open to those terms and thinking about, okay, yeah, my parents or my caregivers were there 100%. They were there every day. But I really didn't get like emotional connection with them. Maybe they didn't really tell me how proud they were of me when I did that one project or when I won a game in my favorite sport. I didn't get, the validation. I didn't get the praise. I didn't get the things that I wanted, or I didn't feel like I could be myself because I wasn't allowed to, because it's against our culture. Or so those things, I know they're not huge, big things, but that's part of the what we call like covert trauma, more of the trauma that's a bit more on the quieter side, but it still has a just as much as a big impact as like the loud trauma, like those who have been physically abused or been in a car accident or something, pretty egregious. They still impact the body, the nervous system, the brain just as much, regardless of how we experience the trauma. So abandonment and neglect is the main trauma that sets up love addicts to be the way that they are. They crave attention, they crave love, they're craving validation because they never got it in their childhood. And now in adulthood and in their adult relationships, they are doing everything in their power to prevent anything that could be near abandonment or neglect or even rejection. So this anxiety that you have, this obsession that you have, this stalking or whatever the behavior is that's part of your love addiction, there's a purpose. The purpose is I cannot and I will not be hurt again. I can't handle that. So yeah, I'm gonna go see where they're at right now. I'm gonna go drive over to their house and see if they're at home because the truth is that I can't face being hurt. I can't face this abandonment again. So I get it. I get why we do these behaviors as a love addict.
Absolutely. Which is heart-wrenching. It's intense and it navigates your life.
Mhm.
Like you said, yeah, it does take a toll on the nervous system. I like to see it as it takes an imprint upon the nervous system. And the way that you're describing these dynamics, it reminds me a lot of enmeshment too. Dr. Kenneth Adams' work I really value and look up to in regard to the enmeshment because he talks about how there's abuse, there's neglect, and then enmeshment could be another thing that people experience, and it just lives in your body, and you just have these compulsions, like you said, to you can't afford to like it is life or death to the nervous system. It is life or death between like I am connected to people and they love me or they don't. And if I'm alone, I die. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Pia Mellody calls it a relational death. So she talks about that, right? It literally feels like death. That if I am not with this person or if I'm not with a person, then I'll die. Dr. Helen Fisher, she is also another researcher in this, romantic love and how rejection plays on the brain and the body and the psyche. So she's got phenomenal research that you could look into. Um, she calls us the mother of all addictions. There's just so much that is part of the upbringing that sets up our love addict clients, and that's where, I think we need to do a bit of that digging.
Absolutely. Thank you. On top of these traumas and things that set someone up for love addiction,
Mm.
what else sets someone else? What else sets someone up for love addiction and or limerence? And what is limerence?
Yeah. So I wanted to also mention the enmeshment piece that you said, so I'll come back to that in a second. But the limerence, it's part of the beginning, I would say, process of love addiction. It's this really intense infatuation with another person. With limerence, you might not actually ever speak to this person. It just might be that coffee shop, the guy or the girl or the person that's always at the coffee shop. So cute. I'm obsessed with them. Or it's the barista that you see every single day that you go to the coffee shop, or the person at the gym, right? You don't actually like approach them. Now, that's not a requirement for limerence, but that's kind of like what I'm speaking to, though. It's like this distant infatuation. The fantasy, that objectification that we talked about is definitely present with limerence. So limerence is kind of like that first step of like, ooh, like it's like finding the identification. It's the awareness. It's like the, oh, that's the person. That's the one that I like. And it's still, it will, even if you do approach this person, let's say, and you start a friendship or you want to pursue a relationship, um, that limerence can still exist within the love addiction cycle as well. It's not like you're just like, okay, poof, it's gone, because that infatuation is still present and it's gonna continue throughout the cycle of the relationship. And then same thing that we talked about with the moods, the highs and the lows with limerence, that's also present. The fantasy is present in limerence, the obsession is present in limerence. And it's also part of that affect dysregulation. It's an attempt to regulate our mood, regulate an emotion. If I just think about this, that person from the gym, that's going to make me feel good for a few minutes.
Yeah, that element of escapism.
Yeah, yeah.
It reminds me a lot of that show You. Have you
Oh,
seen that?
yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
perfect picture of
I
limerence.
I love watching TV. I love all of these shows because of I use it as research. Uh, I don't know how many of you watch Love Island. It's on right now. How many of you watched 90 Day Fiance and all of that whole franchise? You and some of these other movies that are out there, because I'm always looking. I'm looking for these like relational patterns, these dynamics. The show You is a great watch. Very like storytelling is great, but it's also on a pretty extreme level because of what he does in the show. I mean, there's pretty I don't want to give it away too much, but there's some, there's kidnapping, there's like some torture, there's murder, there's a lot going on in that show. So this is definitely to a high level, but if we look at the pattern that he's engaging in, and I love the narrating that he does on the show. A lot of the show is just like you're watching him live his life, or you're watching him follow someone, and he's narrating over it. And like that's the inner dialogue, the inner workings of this love addiction or this intimacy issue that he has. It's like how he reasons or how he is trying to justify what he's doing. It's fascinating. But yes, I love that show.
Yeah. What were you going to say on enmeshment?
Yeah, enmeshment. Okay. You mentioned Ken Adams and, so okay, enmeshment then on the flip side. So we were talking about how abandonment and neglect, rejection sets up the love addict. It's enmeshment that sets up the love avoidant. So that's why if you have all of that, if you have abandonment, neglect, a rejection, and enmeshment in your story, then that's how we're set up to have both love addiction and love avoidance. So with enmeshment, this can be a like absolutely just a cultural dynamic. A lot of cultures have enmeshment built in, and that's just the way that it is. And so that's why when we're working with clients, we have to take in culture into consideration. Because I'm not going to ask you to set boundaries or cut off your mom, or, stop speaking to this person or doing this or that when that's just the culture of it. So we, as clinicians and as coaches, we need to be mindful of that, right? But I'm taking it into consideration. I'm having conversation. I'm asking what they feel like. How do how does it impact them? But ultimately, that enmeshment is very, it's like this engulfment. It's like this, it's just the too much feeling. It's the overwhelming feeling of like, why can't you just leave me alone? Like, why can't my family just leave me alone? Why can't these people just leave me alone? I kind of look at it as this like suffocating type of a feeling. That's how I experienced it. So in my culture, enmeshment is normal. That's just the way that it goes. Everyone knows everyone's business. You have to run something by this uncle or that aunt, or this family member needs to know what's going on, or you need to, again, we grew up with like trying to hide our lives so that the aunts and uncles didn't find out what was going on, or if we were going on a trip, or if we would, whatever it was, we figured out how to hide it. But what that does though is that's where this avoidance develops then in that because we're not allowed to be free. We're not allowed, we have to be mindful of all of these little micro isms, right? That now I need to hide these things. And so that's part of like what develops the avoidance, not the only thing, but part of it. And so really with love avoidance, I look at it as a nervous system response, a trauma response. The avoidance isn't like purposeful. It isn't like, oh, you're annoying me. I'm just gonna go, like, I'm gonna dip. I'm gonna go, right? It's not really like that. It's just this actual discomfort, this like trauma response that's happening internally that I don't know how to tolerate, and I need to go regulate. And the only way that I know how to do that is to leave this situation, leave this house, and I need to go somewhere that's a bit safer for me. So that might be work, that might be a basketball court, it might be the golf course, it might be the gym, it might whatever it might be, that's where I need to go. That's where I'm going to feel safe again. So it's not this like very intentional experience of avoidance. It can be at times, but it's also this very unintentional system that's just playing underneath the surface.
Yeah, it's really subconscious for the most part, right? Unless you're aware. And even if you're aware, it can be really tricky to catch because it is just such an impulse. It's just an automatic response.
Yeah, exactly.
And within that, the enmeshment, there's a lot of intrusion that happens within that. People have boundaries, but boundaries aren't honored within those systems. They're just trampled, right?
Yeah,
And then, right, then that just forces the person, I think, the way that I conceptualize it is to be defensive because they need to protect themselves. I mean, what else are they going to do? But then there's more to that. Like, it is that, and it's also the family making fun of you because you're pulling away, right? Or whatever it is. Like, it's not acceptable for the family system. So families do what they do. And this isn't talking smack about families, it's just naming the dynamics that happen.
exactly. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as we segue a little bit into how to treat these clinical challenges, right? These life experiences, can you tell us a little bit about the different attachment styles? What's important to know about them?
There are two like main types, right? There's the secure and then the insecure. So in the secure, there's only one option under that. It's called the secure attachment style. Under the insecure, there is the anxious attachment style, there is the avoidant attachment style, and then there's the mixed, which is anxious avoidant. There's lots of terms that you might hear out there. You might hear the fearful avoidant, you might hear the disorganized. So there's different terminology, but it means the same thing. I think of it as the four quadrants of the attachment style. So we've got the left is secure, top right is anxious, and then bottom left is avoidant, and then the bottom right is the mixed, the disorganized, or the anxious avoidant type. One of the ways that it's determined is, there's questionnaires. You could take a lot of different questionnaires and it helps determine which of these quadrants you might land in. But essentially, what we're looking at and what these scales are kind of rating is your level of anxiety within a relationship and your level of avoidance in a type of relationship. It's kind of like plots, it plots where you might land depending on how much avoidance or anxiety that you might have in a relationship. So obviously with the anxious attachment style, pretty on the nose with that one. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of needing to seek external esteem, value, worth, validation. A lot of it is on the external because they may not know how to access internally and draw upon their own self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth or value. Again, their trauma may have impacted those in some way. And so the idea of even accessing my self-esteem or my self-confidence feels really far-fetched for them. But what's easier is I can get some validation from a really good friend who's gonna like, big me up, or a partner that thinks I'm really attractive, or that thinks I'm really cool or mysterious, or whatever it might be. That's a hit. That makes me feel good. But the problem with that when it comes externally is it's fleeting, it's risky. It's not gonna always be there. You constantly have to search for it. You have to do something to get it. Whereas internally, you don't have to do anything. You just gotta dig in. You gotta reach down and say, okay, I am worthy. I am a badass. I am a whatever, right? Like, and that will should give you just enough of the dopamine hit that you might need, or the confidence or the value that you need. Now, with the avoidant, with the enmeshment, for example, there's lots of different reasons why someone might be avoidant. Enmeshment is one of those ways. But trauma, different types of trauma can also make us avoidant as well. But yeah, those are the types of folks that really also struggle with connecting with themselves and or connecting with others. There's a lot of discomfort in that, or there's a lot of like relational skills that are tricky for them to display or to keep up with. And so yeah, they'll go more internal. They might seem more mysterious. They might seem a bit more on the unknown side. They might be quiet, those kinds of things. Then we've got the mixed type, the disorganized, someone who is anxious and avoidant. So again, now we combine everything that we just talked about. We've got the person that's going to be super anxious sometimes, and then we're going to be super avoidant sometimes. So this is that push-pull dynamic that we see in a lot of relationships. And probably, correct me if I'm completely wrong here, probably what we see in media, what we see in TV is people who are anxious type. We see them in relationships with the avoidant type. That is exactly what you're watching likely, or the person that has the disorganized attachment style.
100%. And I'll come in here too. We do have episode 11 that talks a little bit more about attachment styles and couples and things like that and navigating that dynamic. So do feel free to check that out if you like. I'll say it's that programming. And here's what's normal: it's normal to be unstable in relationships, right? Period. Then we have a lot of these quizzes and things like that. And a lot of people will show that they have secure attachment, but I think that that's false for me. And please, I would love to hear your experience. Whenever I see someone who shows us secure, it is typically somebody who is more avoidant, actually, and not in touch with their feelings or their true needs. They have this disconnect between here's what I think I should answer, and I believe that that's what I am, but I'm not. If you ask anybody in their lives, like they're pretty disconnected or removed from the family, whatever, right? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I would agree, especially if I know this client and I'm like, huh, interesting. You landed on secure, but we're working on all of these things. And yeah, I would agree. I think either, even if it is an anxious attacher, they might be minimizing their experience of anxiety. And so they might land in the secure quadrant. Or yeah, it could absolutely be the avoidant attacher who doesn't really know the needs and wants of themselves or other people, but they think they do. Because again, a lot of avoidant attachers have these different parts of them. They might be super intellectual, they may be super smart. They know how we're supposed to be. They know that emotions are XYZ, but then when you really get down to the nitty-gritty and you're like, hey, tell me about how that makes you feel, they kind of freeze.
Or we'll say, I think.
I think exactly. I think I feel, or I think exactly. So that's where we immediately clock it as you're going right back up to the cognitive. You're going right back up here. We need you to stay down here in the body. Tell me where you feel that emotion. Where do you feel that sensation? And that's the tricky part is with trauma in general, I feel like it absolutely disconnects and it like severs the connection between our mind, our brain, our to our body. And I think about trauma healing as like repairing and reintegrating this connection between brain and body because we need to. That's the way that we're designed. And we need to be, I don't know how many times you've heard this with your clients, but like people struggle with connecting with their body. Where do you feel that sensation? Where do you feel safe in your body in this moment? Where is their pain? Where is their softness in your body right now? Those are questions that you've probably never been asked before. And I totally get that. And that's why we do it in the therapy rooms, right? Is trying to build a connection to your body. I teach it as learning the language of your body. Like the body speaks a completely different language. It doesn't speak English. It speaks in sensation. It speaks in vibration. It speaks in tingling. It speaks in, dead spots in your body and numbness. That's the language that I'm trying to teach you. But it's your job. I can't tell you what your body feels. But I'll teach you, I'll train you on how to connect with it. But um, now we're just going down a whole different pathway here. But yeah, I'll stop there for a second.
It's really valuable to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And I'll say I was that client, right? Like I did struggle a lot to connect with my body. And the reasoning for that is because things were so chaotic and so overwhelming, period. And then I had a lot of emotionality, but like I was repressed my whole life. So it was just too much. And if I was going to let it out, I needed a therapist who could really actually see me, attune to me, and that I really trusted to be really solid, that could really have my back. And then when I started to have that, then I was able to like open up little by little, right? That other things like yoga could help, but yoga's not for everybody. If things are really intense and you struggle to slow down, maybe do like shorter yoga sequences, right? Or do like more of a quicker flow type of yoga rather than like a yin class where you're just sitting there in one position for 15 minutes, right? So definitely dancing, walking, any bilateral movement with your body can be really helpful. Maybe in general, finding movement that you enjoy doing. and then doing that, and then just kind of sitting with your body more and more and just connecting, like, hey, I see you. Oh, okay, you need water, kind of a passive relationship before you do that, like head on type of thing. Lots of ideas there.
Mhm.
What other treatment ideas do you have for this kind of stuff?
I think of it as two tracks. That's the way that I train therapists on this. So the first track is the addictive process, because that's absolutely alive. That's part of what's happening here, right? A lot of research is now showing that love addiction does align with behavioral addictions. There's not a lot of research on love addiction, I will say, but trust me, I am scouring the internets on finding whatever is out there about love addiction. And that is one of the things, along with dependency that we talked about, and love withdrawal, which is also an addictive term. Withdrawal comes from the addiction language. There's urges, there's cravings that also come in with love addiction. So those all fit with the addictive model, the addiction model. And so those are some of the things that we want to first start with in the treatment process is number one, let's figure out what's going on for you. What is going on in the inner workings of this love addiction for you? What's really like bothering you? What's really fueling the addiction? And then let's start to work on abstinence, right? That's part of any addiction treatment model is either complete abstinence or harm reduction, right? I would say with love addiction, um, doing the abstinence like as much as possible would be the best bet. But again, with love addiction, with it being such a because love is a basic human need, basic human need. Everyone will experience love at some point in their life. No one is immune to this, right? So we're all going to be a little love addicted at some point in our life, right? It just might not take over our entire life. We might be able to move through it quickly and then get to secure healthy love, right? However, those of us who have had trauma and who do struggle with the relational side of things, then it can get on the addictive side of things. It can become a little bit more compulsive. So that's what we want to work with first. We want to try to arrest a lot of these behaviors that is just fueling the addiction. That's just going to keep you stuck in the cycle. Once you get some really good maintenance, once you go through love withdrawal, so that's the big one. Love withdrawal usually is when you're going to pick up the phone and call a therapist and say, I am on the verge of death, right? Like we just talked about. I cannot handle this anymore and I need help. So that's usually when we get clients coming into the door and into the therapy rooms is I just broke up or I need to break up and I don't know how to do it or I'm on and off again and I can't stay off. I don't know how to move on from my relationship. Usually it's because that withdrawal process is so painful. And the only thing that's going to resolve that pain, again, is either some other substance. So usually this is when we see like alcohol, we see weed, we see other substances, shopping, sex might go up a little bit here. This is where we see an increase in other addictions. So again, we're not arresting the addiction when we do that. We're just substituting the addiction. So that's why it's incredibly important that we need to stop the whole addictive system at play. Withdrawal is the most difficult, most delicate process. And as therapists, and that's what I teach and train on too, is like that's the time that we're soft, we're a bit more gentle, but we're also firm and we're directive, and we're gonna, we need you to be on board with us. We're gonna hold you accountable to this stuff. And really is to prevent them from relapsing, meaning going right back to that partner, or going right back to the same behaviors again, whether it's with the same partner or you do this whole cycle all over again with another person. Maybe you jump back onto the apps and maybe you're in your love withdrawal and so much pain and now you're like, well, I just need to find somebody else. That's what's going to heal me. That's what's going to help me. And we jump back on the apps and we maybe that's where the sex kicks in too. So now we're going back into fantasy because all of these people look great and I'm getting all of these matches online and I'm getting all these messages. That's going to make me feel good again. All right, now I'm going to get in a relationship with this person or that person, or I'm going to go back to my partner because now I feel good again,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And as a therapist, it's really important to screen for as many addictions we can so
Yeah.
that we're able to catch these behaviors as they're happening.
100%. And prepare the client too, like prepare yourselves too, that like, okay, if I break up or if they break up with me, like I need to get rid of all the alcohol in the house. Like I need to have my boundaries set. I need to have my good friends on speed dial. Like I need to have them readily available. Again, that's the part of the stuff that your therapist or your coach will help you with to set that up. Um, so once the addiction side of things have been more stabilized, that's when we want to start the trauma work. That's where we're going to dig in to the childhood stuff, the value stuff, the messaging that we were talking about earlier, the abandonment, the neglect, the enmeshment. That's where we'll do a deeper dive, really start that investigation process with the client, and then we start the trauma healing process as well. And that's where we do a lot of this body stuff that we were just talking about. That's where we start to look at the emotions, the stuck and the stored and the frozen feelings and emotions. We want to thaw those out. We want to defrost those. This doesn't mean it's a fun experience whatsoever, but it's a crucial experience to get through, to figure out how do I deserve to be loved? How do I want to express my love in a healthy way? Figure out what are healthy relationships for me. Like what do I want and need moving forward? I can't settle with what I've been doing in the past. I need to rewrite the manual, so to speak, on how I learned to love or how I've witnessed love in my story because I don't like that. It didn't work for me. So I need to rewrite the manual, so to speak. That's the language I use with my clients is let's throw out the old manual, let's create a new manual. And that manual is full of your own rules that are from you, not from society or from culture. I mean, it can absolutely adopt that, which again, which cultural, religious, rules that do you like, do you want to stick with and keep? Let's add that to the new manual, the new script that you have for yourself. Let's figure out new affirmations. How do you esteem yourself? How do you value yourself? Let's put that in the manual, right? What are the skills? What are the go-to methods that are gonna make you feel good to get the dopamine hits in a healthier way versus this extreme dopamine hit in these addictive relationships?
Yes. And that language you're using is very empowering. And though it is culturally informed, it provides for that element of choice.
Yes, absolutely. You get to choose. Through your work, through your healing, you get to choose exactly what you want your life to look like. One of my colleagues, and you're probably familiar to Chris Simon says, make the life make your life exactly as you want it, so that there's no need to want to use any drugs or substances or behaviors. Live the life that you want to. Create that. You have that within your power and within your choice. Let somebody be your support, your guide, your therapist, your coach, a really good friend, a sponsor. Let them be your guide, walk you through this process, but you can create that. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Along with that self-help component, what are some tips, guidances that you have in regard to intentional dating and prevention of all this?
Yeah, well, first, I think if you're in a love addicted relationship or again, it doesn't even have to be a love addiction. If you're in a relationship where you're just not happy, it's not aligning with your new values, your new morals, and you're like, okay, I need to figure this out. This isn't the right person for me. I need to finally let go. So first, I think figuring that piece out, working through that, and coming up with what I would say is like a sober breakup plan, right? So this is really assessing your history of breakups, especially if you're the type that's been on again, off again, on again, off again. Like, what is it? It's like a relapse autopsy, right? Like a relapse, really assessing what happened in each of those experiences and how do we want to do it differently next time. So let's figure out what are the behaviors that I've engaged in that has led me to relapse constantly or get back into this relationship constantly. And what boundaries do I need to set in place for myself and for that person as well? And stick by them, right? Boundaries, expectations, and then come up with the consequences around that too. Like if I don't follow these boundaries, again, the consequences, you're just going to be stuck in this pattern. Nothing's going to change for you, unfortunately. That's a natural consequence. Um, so really think about, okay, what is my breakup plan? How am I going to go about this? This isn't just picking up the phone and just saying we're done, right? There's just too much risk in that still. There's just too many openings in that could bring the partner back, and then you might, be like, oh, okay, maybe you've changed. Let's get back together again. So again, really being solid and set in your new values in this new manual that you want to write for yourself, and really think, is this person going to be the right person for me? They've already shown me who they are. They haven't changed in the time that I've been with them. So again, sticking true with your decision of the breakup, right? Okay. So you go through breakup, then I would say really take some time for yourself. Get to know yourself. Date yourself. For a lot of people, that's incredibly hard. The idea of going to a restaurant and sitting by yourself without a phone, without a laptop, without a book is incredibly daunting. But I challenge you. I challenge you because in that experience, you're going to learn so much about the discomfort that you have in that. If you can overcome that, if you do that enough times, repeat that, it's like exposure therapy, right? Put yourself in that situation over and over again. You build resilience, you build capacity, you build tolerance to that level of discomfort. And it's such a minute little thing, but like imagine how that's going to now transfer into your relationships in the future. So really take time to be with yourself. Do your therapy. Go see your coach. Go see your besties. Go hang out with your friends. Go hang out with your family. Really assess the different areas of your life. Maybe you need to do a little more improvement around work. Maybe there's some passion projects you have at home that you really want to get done. Like focus on those things. Minimum, maximum 6 months to a year. I know that sounds like so long for a lot of people who haven't been single. But if you haven't been single, that in and itself, that experience is a crucial experience. Or if you're someone that's actually never been in a relationship, dating, that's an experience. Go out there, test the dating field, test yourself. Like what are my boundaries in a dating experience? If I don't even know, if I don't date, because again, the hookup culture is alive and thriving. There's so many times we completely skip the dating process and we go straight to sexual intimacy. And then from sexual intimacy, it just stays intense because the sex is usually the it's like the value that's put in the forefront versus the value of friendship or connection or emotional closeness. So really think about how you go about the dating process. So that's why I say intentional dating, right? Create a plan with your therapist or with your coach or with your sponsor. Go to meetings, go to 12-step meetings. There are love addiction anonymous meetings. They also have a love avoidant meeting. I think they just have one, but hopefully that's growing. But really understand who you are before you get back out there, because that's the most important thing. What is this saying? The only relationship that you are in the longest is the relationship with yourself. That is the only relationship you should really, really, really care about. You are the only one that you will be with until the day that you die. So why are we not putting more time, effort, and nurturance into that? So recovery, be in recovery, take this seriously, right? Develop a relapse prevention plan. Because there's going to be some slips, that's okay, but have a plan around that. What is that relapse prevention plan? Again, keep your support network, keep your therapist, your coach, keep them, keep them close. But the recovery rates, the ability to recover from love addiction and love avoidance is absolutely doable.
Yes, it is. And the only reason we're even talking about this is because one, yeah, to raise awareness. It is rampant and it's normalized, as we keep saying, but also to give you more of a sense of choice around your behaviors so that you live a more empowering, open, fulfilling life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So if you're, need some more resources, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or want more of an understanding of this. You're welcome to email me. My email is healwithhavi@gmail.com. I am going to be launching a love addiction coaching group for women that is launching Wednesday, July 1st, and that's going to be at 4 o'clock Pacific time. It's going to be a 90-minute group. It's going to run on a bi-weekly schedule. It will talk a lot of just education on the front end about what love addiction is. There was a research study that came out about the rates of love addiction behaviors decreasing simply by awareness, by having education. So for me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna really run with that. There's research that backs having an understanding and awareness and education about love addiction does have an effect, does have an impact on the recovery process, or even just the behavioral experience of love addiction as well. So we'll do that. There's going to be a lot of what I've talked about, right? This sober breakup plan. Let's figure that out. We're happy to support you with that. Intentional dating. Let's figure it out. We'll talk about the values. We'll talk about messages that you grew up with that's, stopping you, keeping you stuck. Just, anything that's going to help propel you in your recovery. I'm here for it. I want to help whatever comes up. It's going to be a lot more conversational, just very inviting. I want to hear from you guys, like I said, if it's in group or if it's just an email, but it's not going to be super clinical or anything, but conversational. I want you guys to feel and understand this condition or this expression of love and figure out and support you in adjusting it and making it into your version of a healthy love.
And if you'd like to find her, she's at healwithhavi.com. Her handle on Instagram is at healxhavi. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.